Yes. All right, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you, Ron. Mr. McCabe, I'm going to approach this in a little bit of a different way to hopefully make it easier on you and me and the jury. I'd like to hand you, with the court's permission, the 4 pages that you've already reviewed, just to have you identify them. If I may, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I'd just like you to take a look at them and just confirm that's what you've already seen before we took the break.
Yes, these are the ones you showed me earlier.
Thank you, sir. May I approach?
Yes.
Having reviewed those, sir, does this appear to be an accurate transcription of the sequence and the content of the group text chat within that time frame?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
All right, the only concern I have is I don't want to give the jury something they need a flashlight to read.
Well, my next...
So can I see it?
Of course.
Why don't I see counsel? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bates, if you would display the first page, 2150. How is your distance vision? Are you able to read what's on the screen?
I don't know why it's on blue. This is, can I have them in front of me
Can
while
I have
you're
that? Thank
displaying
you.
them?
Yes.
Please. Thank you very much.
And feel free to use the flashlight there.
Yes, thank you.
There we go.
Oh, yeah, that's much better.
Much better. Okay,
Yes.
now we can all see it.
Yep.
With regard to your initial text exchange that we talked about, can you confirm what you texted at 1:34 and 27 seconds in the afternoon of February 1st of 2022?
Yes. You want me to?
Yeah.
Oh, troopers back out front, but in front of Agent House. Looks like more has been dug up there for at least, there or at least looks like it.
Okay, and Mr. Bates, if you go down the page to see the responses. Okay, and who was it that responded to your notification that the troopers were back out front?
That would be Brian Albert.
Brian Albert Sr.
Yeah, yep, senior.
And his response was,
Right now.
and that was at 1:34 p.m. and 45 seconds?
Yes, it was.
And you took that to be a question, correct?
Yeah, asking right now, yes.
And we can move to the next exchange. Yes, 2151, please. Was that blocking you, sir? Yes, please. All right. And you responded to Brian by saying what to his question about right now?
I responded, yes,
And that was at 1:34 p.m. and 56 seconds?
yes.
You would have still been on scene at that time?
I'm not sure if I was still on scene, but I was obviously, if it was in the area, it must have been in the area, correct?
And the next exchange, Mr. Bates? And who responded to you?
Brian Albert again,
And his response was?
okay.
Do you have a memory as to whether or not Brian Albert was on scene at that time or if he was somewhere else?
I don't have a memory of where Brian was at that time.
Given the fact that you're saying troopers are out front and he's asking right now,
I'd assume he's not, I'd assume he's somewhere else, yeah.
third exchange. Okay, and your response to him, or your response to the group, I should say, was what?
I had to pick up a car, so I drove through.
All right, so this is a little further than we talked about.
Oh, I know, we're getting to the next one.
So take this one down, please.
Let me just have a moment here, I'm sorry. Yes, the second bubble, please, Mr. Bates, on 2152. Now we're at 1:35 PM and 16 seconds, Mr. McCabe?
Yes, that's correct.
And your text to the group of you, your wife, Brian and Nicole Albert is what?
Trying to get pictures.
All right, and at this point, I've asked the next bubble be displayed, and then I'm going to skip to the bubble after that once you see it. The next bubble comes from Brian Albert.
Yes, Brian Albert.
All right, and that's at 1:35 and 30.
Mr. Yannetti, let him,
I'm sorry,
the screen speaks for itself.
What-
If it
what-
doesn't, then the witness can.
of course. What time is that at?
1:35, 32.
All right, and his response, does that appear to be a typo?
PK, I'm assuming.
All right, the next bubble after that would be 21:53, please, to talk. And that is from whom?
Brian Albert.
All right, and the time there, are you able to make that out?
Does that say 1:35, 34 or 1:38, 34?
Whatever it says. If you can't see it, you can't see it. Next.
Sure, and his response was,
Okay,
does that appear to be correct in the PK?
I'd have to go back and,
Well, the previous one you
Next,
tested.
next question.
Sure. All right, we can take that off for a minute. I'd like to just go over two more areas of these group chats with you. You would agree with me that later that same day on February 4th, the four of you, your wife, Brian Albert, and Nicole Albert, discussed in that group chat the fact that Michael Proctor was talking to Kerry Roberts over the phone, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
At 3:01 and 48 seconds, you commented on the interview of Michael Proctor with Kerry Roberts, did you not?
Objection.
Sustained.
May we be seen?
Okay. Jurors
think you can have it, thank you. So I'd like you to not leave the witness in the dark if there's something that he can have.
So what I'm going to do now, sir, is to hand you 3 more pages and ask if you can identify those.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. McCabe, generally, do you recognize those,
Yeah.
sir? All right, so
I
go
just
ahead.
marching it up, yep.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Yannetti.
The pages that I've handed to you and that you now have in your possession, those are from the same group chat that you identified earlier, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it appears to have the same sequence and content of the group chat as well?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Over the Commonwealth's objection, again, I'm not sending anything to the jury that they can't read. So let's mark this for identification. And the substance of those, each individual one will be question by question.
Understood. So, Mr. Bates, with regard to page 2160, I'm looking for the second bubble.
Do you have an extra copy for me to follow along? No?
Sure we do.
Or, Jim, was it, Mr. Yannetti, was this in the, what was marked for, you're using that? All right,
I believe we have extra copies here.
Thank you.
all right. And if it's a question by question objection, just,
May that be displayed, Your Honor?
may what be displayed?
Well, I just offered that as an exhibit, and I'm asking.
And I did not take it in. I said the content on a question by question, so it's each bubble.
All right. You saw that at 3:01 p.m. and 48 seconds on February 1st that you texted, quote, "Very weird that she's been barely interviewed. The whole dead comment was just told. I was supposed to have them talk last night and forgot to tell Proctor to call her." Do you recall that?
I recall it, correct.
All right. And those were your words, correct?
Yes, they are.
And may that be displayed, please?
No, it's in. We may display it later, but I'd like to move this testimony along, so that's in evidence.
And then in that discussion, at 3:03 p.m. and 15 seconds, it was Brian Albert who texted, quote, hope they don't think she's making it up after the fact for some reason, end quote, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Can you read the timestamp again?
It's the
Yes,
second
It's on
page.
page 02161.
Oh, I found it.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's in the middle. I got that timestamp correct?
30315.
Correct. And I read that accurately. Hope they don't think she's making it up after the fact.
Yes, that's correct.
And then less than a minute later at 3:05 and 32 seconds, you replied, yes, she was hardly interviewed, and I think just answered what was asked. Oh, I'm sorry, strike that whole question. I skipped his next response, which was at 3:05 and 2 seconds, where he said, but if they barely interviewed her, that's on them, correct?
That's from Brian. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, with regard to that exchange, you would agree with me that you were talking about Kerry Roberts being interviewed by Michael Proctor, correct?
I don't want to make an assumption. Do you have the text previous to this that shows that we're referencing Kerry?
I do, and I'll show you that only to refresh your memory. I won't be-
Yeah, I don't want to assume something.
I understand. I'm going to show you one page and ask you to look at it silently to yourself.
Okay,
And I've opened the packet for the page.
okay.
You can just look up at me when you're done.
Yeah, again, my assumption it's Kerry based. Can I go back another page?
Feel free.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yes.
Did those previous pages refresh your memory about the context of your group chat conversation?
Yes, it did.
And certainly it was talking about Kerry Roberts being interviewed, correct?
Yes, it was.
And you were passing along information about that interview to Brian Albert, were you not?
Yes, I was letting him know that Kerry was being interviewed.
And you were telling him things that she was saying, correct? Remember you said the whole dead comment was just told?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, but I-
Sustained.
All right, in any case, we're going to move on to the very last discussion that I'd like to ask you about. Earlier that day, February 1st of 2022,
Oh,
at
before.
12:50 p.m. and 37 seconds, Brian Albert texted the group, which would have again been his wife Nicole, your wife Jennifer, and you. And that text was,
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so I can't, which bubble on which page?
02148.
Right, on which page?
That's the page, 02148.
Okay, so I don't have
And
it.
the bubble is the second of the three bubbles.
So I don't have it.
I don't have it.
I don't know what the objection's pertaining to. Jurors, I apologize that this is taking so long. You know what, Mr. Yannetti, why don't you,
That's for the court, Your Honor. And for the,
so you're objecting to it, so I'm not going to let you say what it is. You can show it to the witness.
yes, will do.
Which one is this?
Second bubble on 02148. Then the third bubble on 02148. And then the first bubble on 02149. That's all I'll be asking him about.
Thank you.
All right, so I won't allow, based on the objection from the Commonwealth, the second bubble on 02148. I will allow the author of the third bubble
It,
On page 02148?
No. The second bubble on 02148,
Is not allowed into evidence.
I need to be heard on that then.
No, all right, I'll hear you at sidebar. Yes, please.
Can I have the jury back, please?
And Mr. Jackson, if you are planning on doing this with the next witness, I'd like you to let Mr. Lally know which ones of these you intend to use so that we can avoid all of this. And if you have a copy from me, that would be helpful for objections.
Court, all rise for the jury. Court is back in session. Please be seated.
Stianetti?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McCabe, when we broke, I was just about to ask you about the last exchange here. You will agree with me that on February 1st of 2022 at 12:51 and 49 seconds, you texted the group chat to say, ask Chris to ask some questions, correct?
Yep, I'm reading it right now. Yes, that's correct.
And who was the Chris you were referring to?
That would be Chris Albert.
Brian's brother, correct?
That is correct.
And then you texted your wife, Brian Albert, and Nicole Albert, quote, tell them the guy never went in the house, correct?
Yeah, that's part of the same text. Yes.
Mr. McCabe, who was the guy that you were referring to? Does he have a name?
That would be John O'Keefe.
When you told the group to tell them the guy never went in the house, that was you talking about how you should all get your stories straight, correct?
No.
You would agree with me that your stories are all straight in terms of the guy never went in the house, correct?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
John never went in the house. It's not a story, it's a fact.
Well, when you said, tell them the guy never went in the house, Brian Albert was on that exchange still, was he not? He was still part of the group text?
Yes, Brian is on the exchange.
And Brian Albert was the one to respond, wasn't he?
Let me switch pages here. 12:51.
He responded, did he not?
Yes, he did.
And then at that point, you knew Brian Albert was the oldest brother of the Albert family, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
The oldest sibling in that family, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And in his response to your instructions that his younger brother, Chris, should say that John O'Keefe never went in the house, or the guy never went in the house, you would agree with me that he responded with one word, correct?
Yes, he did.
And in response to you saying the guy never went in the house, Brian Albert's response was, exactly, correct?
Yes, that's his response.
All right, we're done here.
All right. Commonwealth, any redirect?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Now, Mr. McCabe, John O'Keefe never went in the house that night, is that correct?
That's correct.
And from this text communication, as far as Chris Albert was concerned, was Chris Albert ever at the house on that night?
No, he was not.
And this is something that you, obviously, this death of John O'Keefe occurring, how it did, where it did, and why it did, that was something that you discussed.
Can you keep your voice up?
Yes, I'm sorry. This tragic occurrence as far as what happened to John O'Keefe, his death, where, why, how, that was something that you discussed within your family, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And why?
I didn't hear that
Why
one.
was it a discussion in your family?
You're talking about the immediately after? It was, no one knew what happened. John never never came in the house, so we had no idea what happened to John.
And John was someone you were a friend to, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, did you ever tell anybody what to say at any point in time to the state police, to any investigator whatsoever?
No,
Did anyone in your family or in your presence ever tell anyone that in front of you?
no.
Now, you asked some questions about when you were looking out and you saw the SUV, correct?
Yes,
And your focus, as you indicated in your testimony, was on the SUV, correct?
yes, that's correct.
Now, during the time that you were looking out, did you ever see a pickup truck outside?
I knew the pickup truck was out there, but again, I didn't look at the pickup. I kind of saw it, but was focusing on the SUV.
And
I saw a vehicle out there, let's say that.
my question is more so, as far as the tire marks that you were talking about in the road, was that before or after the pickup truck was in?
It was after.
Now, you were asked some questions about directionality and things of that nature as far as coming down Chapman or Cedar Crest, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so if someone had driven by the house, missed the house, and then went on to Cedar Crest, turned around, presumably then they would be taking a left or a right from Cedar Crest onto Fairview, is that right?
Yes, if they passed the house, they would have come to Cedar Crest and turned around and come back onto Fairview.
And you were asked some questions about whether or not you saw Mr. O'Keefe from your vantage point in the SUV, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
You didn't see him, correct?
I did not see him.
Could you see anyone inside from where you were?
I could not see anybody in the vehicle.
Do you see anything about the windows as far as their tint or anything like that?
I don't recall the tint. I couldn't see inside, though.
As far as any statements that Ms. Nagel made on the way home, is it your testimony that you, Ms. Nagel didn't say those statements or that you didn't hear those statements?
I did not hear those statements.
Now, turning to February 1st, do you recall what you were doing on that day when you drove by Fairview?
I don't recall what I was doing. I don't recall exactly what I did that day.
And were you going specifically by Fairview or where were you?
Based off of reading these text messages, I was doing something, picking up a car or something, it says. I don't recall where, and I cut down Fairview.
Now, as far as your statement in those text messages where you said, looks like more has been dug up, do you recall that?
I don't recall it. I read it in the text message.
Do you recall what that was in regard to? As far as what were they digging?
Sorry. I do recall. They dug out the snow. It looked like the snow banks. It looked like there was more snow dug out around the scene.
And by the scene, you mean around where the flagpole fire hydrant that was?
Correct. Yes.
And do you recall any sort of change in the weather between the 29th and February 1st?
I believe the temperature rose. Snow was starting to melt, if I recall.
Now, when you and your wife your wife was talking to Mr. O'Keefe and you were given directions, there was some reference to Bella's house, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that was sort of used as a directionality as far as Mr. O'Keefe would be familiar with where Bella's house was?
Yes, that's correct.
What, if any, relationship in the past were you aware of between Mr. O'Keefe and Bella, and Bella's mother?
At some point, Bella's parents were separated, since divorced. At some point, Mr. O'Keefe had a relationship with Bella's mother.
And after that conversation in which that was referenced as far as Bella's house, did you ever hear from John O'Keefe again?
Never heard from him again.
Nothing further.
Anything?
Just very briefly.
Okay?
You were just asked if you ever told anyone, if you told anyone what to tell the state police or investigators, and your answer was no, correct?
Yeah, I don't recall telling anyone to tell anybody anything.
So with regard to your statement, tell them the guy never went in the house, who's the them?
Do you mind if I go back and read?
Take your time.
I think I know, I just want to read it. The them was Channel 4 went into D&E.
You done with your answer?
Yeah, you just asked me who them was.
And the answer is, you were instructing people on the group chat to tell Channel 4 that the guy never went in the house, correct?
Yes, this was on February
February 1st.
1st. As I said, none of us in the house had any idea what happened to John O'Keefe, so we instructed, I was saying, we don't know what happened, he never came in the house.
All right, so,
That's what was my statement was.
sir, I didn't ask you for any of that just now, did I?
You just asked me
No.
why I said
I
that.
asked you who the them was. did I
Objection, Your
not?
Honor.
You didn't. You look like you asked me to elaborate.
Okay. So your answer to my question is, the them was you were saying that Channel 4 should be told that the guy never went in the house. Yes or no?
Channel 4 was who I was referencing. Yes.
No further.
All right, you are all set, Mr. McCabe. I will take those documents.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Your next witness, please, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor. The call will call Jennifer McCabe to the stand.
Jimmy.